Hello students, welcome to Legacy Has Academy. In this particular video, we are going to discuss about a recent news coming from the northeastern state of Manipur, where it seems that 5 militants were killed in the internecine battle itself. Now, when we talk about internecine battle, it means the militant groups are fighting within each other. We have different factions representing different interests, and this is the outcome of that particular conflict itself. Now, to give you the context of this particular topic, as per the report coming from the local state police of Manipur and also as confirmed by the Assam Rifles, the paramilitary forces deployed in the state of Manipur, it seems that at least 5 militants were killed in a fierce battle. This fierce battle took place near the area of Noni. Noni is a district in the along the Myanmar border. So along the Noni district, in the Noni district, there is a village called as Devizang village. So in the Devizang village, it is a very dense forested area and hilly terrain, we can say. And this is where in the night battle took place, and that resulted into this fatality as such. Now also security forces have confirmed that this area is kind of unapproachable because there is not a single motorable road available here. Also there is no mobile signal and network in this place. So generally this area is something where security forces do not focus so much. However, after this particular attack and after this particular killing, they have stated that now security forces have been deployed in this particular region as well. Now, if we try to understand this entire conflict, we have to think that the members who were killed either belong to United Kuki National Army, called as UKNA, or they belong to Chin-Kuki Mizo Army, that is referred as CKMA. So basically these are the two groups that are fighting between each other. Both of these groups seems to represent the interest of Kuki tribal groups, but again here the problem is that which group will show its dominance, and that is why to assert their dominance, that is why to ensure that they are the one who are in the leading position whenever there is a negotiation in the future with the government. That is why such kind of killings have been observed earlier. Now, we also have to understand that both of these groups, whether it is UKNA or CKMA, they are an example of non-SOO function. Now, factions. Now, non-SOO function means SOO stand for suspension of operations, and the government of India in the earlier time has signed SOO agreement, that is suspension of operations agreement, with various different insurgent groups operating in the state of Manipur and in the other regions of northeastern states as well. Now, as per the suspension of operations, these rebel groups or these insurgent groups have stated that they will not involve themselves in violent activities. They will not attack the government officials or police forces or even civilians unless and until they reach to a conclusive agreement with the government as such, that what is going to be the status of these regions, because many of these insurgent groups keep on demanding for a separate nation, while some of groups also have said that they would agree with a separate state based on the tribal identity as such. So that is where you have the demand of a separate Kuki land only for the tribal group belonging to Kuki community. Now, these two groups are basically an example of splintering of Kuki rebel outfits. It seems that both groups have divided, maybe due to the ideological reasons or due to the changes in the leadership structure. Now, this is not something that is something that is seen in only this particular tribal groups, but also you talk about the one of the largest and the most notorious insurgent groups operating in the northeastern states of India. We have, like for example, Naga groups. So you'll see that Naga groups themselves, like NSCN, has divided itself into multiple factions. You have NSCN IM, NSCN K, NSCN KK. So similar kind of division and splintering we are seeing now in the Kuki groups as well. Now also one reason behind this killing can be to assert territorial control, that which group will operate in which particular area of Manipur. Now if you try to look at the map of the state of Manipur, as you can see, entire area of the northeastern shares a long border with Myanmar, and the total border, if you measure from the Arunachal Pradesh all the way up to Mizoram, it stands at about 1643 kilometers. This border is not also completely fenced, as it is very porous kind of border. You have dense forest, you have hills, you have the riverine tracts and all that. So management of the border becomes also quite challenging from security forces point of view. Now within that, we are talking about particularly state of Manipur. So Manipur shares a long border of roughly 398 kilometers with the neighboring country of Myanmar as such. Now we also have to think from this about this entire situation from the border perspective of insurgency that is going on in the Manipur since last 2-3 years. We have seen that in the Manipur you have two major groups. One is the tribal groups that are Kuki and Naga, largely living in the hilly areas of Manipur, and within the valley regions you have the Meitei groups which basically are non-tribal in nature as such. So we have seen a kind of ethnic conflict rising between Meiteis and Kuki group since May 2023, and due to the failure of state government to ensure that violence does not intensify, they have failed, and that is why the Chief Minister of Manipur has to resign in the early February of this particular year. And since then, Manipur has been in the under the president's rule as such, while it is believed that maybe in August new government may be formed in Manipur as such. Also, what we are seeing in the Manipur is the deterioration of the security situation, security scenario, and that largely can also be understood from the fact of the Myanmar civil war. As we have just discussed, Manipur shares a long border of almost 400 kilometers with Myanmar, and since 2021, after Myanmar's military carried out a coup against the civilian government of Myanmar, we have seen several rebel factions operating within the territory of Myanmar. They keep on fighting with each other, and also they keep on fighting with Myanmar's military. And because of this region, whenever Myanmar's military increase their presence, start to carry out aerial strikes and intensify their operation in the border areas, many of these rebel groups then take help of this Indian partners, Indian insurgent groups, and they cross the border and they hide in the India as such. So this is also where we see such kind of situations unfolding. Multiple rebel groups we have operating in this entire territory. Again, if you look at the map here, here you have Nagaland, then you have Manipur, then you have Mizoram. Now, in each of these states, and even in the Arunachal Pradesh, you have several groups operating for their own narrow interests. These groups are NSCN, that represents the Naga interest. Then you have Prepak, that targeted group representing the Metis interest. Then you have several other groups such as KNO, Kuki Liberation Army, you have Kuki National Organization. So what we are seeing is the proliferation of arms trade across border, because these insurgent groups need large scale or large number of weapons to operate, and that is when Myanmar's porous border plays a very important role. We also have seen cases of smuggling taking place via Bangladesh border and India's border as well. And thus, there is a proliferation of arms across border that also create another security threat to India as such. Now, before understanding what kind of internal security threats this kind of actions may create in the context of Indian territory, let us try to understand first of all that as far as the Legacy IAS Academy is concerned, we are going to soon start new batches, that is on 9th and 11th of August. These are going to be the weekday and weekend batches. Now, we believe that for preparation of civil services examination, obviously, it requires a comprehensive understanding of all the subjects that are part of GS papers, especially right from GS1 to GS4. And that is what we focus on our programs, to have a comprehensive understanding, interlinkages between different subjects and parts of the syllabus. We also have a unique one-to-one mentorship where any students, if they have any doubt about general doubt about the preparation strategy, or if something they are not able to understand related to any of the subjects, they can also come and meet the faculties as such. And to ensure that even in the classes, interaction is to maximum extent between faculty and students, we have a strict policy of maximum 40 students per batch. Now, we also believe that preparation of civil services examination should be done in an integrated manner. That is why we have a daily mains answer writing program. We have test series for both prelims and mains examination, and we also ensure 360-degree coverage of current affairs. If you want to know more details of this program, you can click the link in the description box of this particular video, or you can download our Legacy app as well, or you can give a call at the number being displayed here. Now, coming back to this particular topic, if we try to understand this inter-ensign rivalry, as we call it, or the interfaction rivalry, interfaction dispute, as we call it, this is largely for the territorial and organizational control. For example, if we talk about the hill district, where I told you in the Manipur, largely you have Kuki groups and Naga group reside. So Kuki and Naga themselves are fighting with each other on the basis of what should be their territorial control. So that is one reason behind the what you can call as behind such kind of violence as such. Also, as we have discussed, that from Myanmar, large scale smuggling takes place. One smuggling is of weapons, and other smuggling is of drugs, because again, drug smuggling, drug trafficking is one of the major sources of revenue for these rebel groups or these insurgent groups as such, militant groups largely we can say. Now, they also ensure that whenever we see such kind of instances where rebel groups are fighting with each other, that fight is also for exercising control over the smuggling operations or smuggling corridors as such. Also, they want to create influence among tribal population. That means whichever group is more dominant, tribals might join it, and they can also support directly and indirectly. Also, on the basis of their success, they also can get access to funding, or they will have opportunity to access resource bases, such as the resources of dense forest area, you have timber resources and other mineral resources. Plus, it also helps in having larger extent of recruitment as well. Now, as far as the internal security challenges from this kind of this killings and this kind of fighting is concerned, we have to understand that this create a big burden on the security forces, especially in the context of intelligence analysis, in the context of reconnaissance operation, because larger the number of groups, more intelligence input need to be received for carrying out an effective and efficient counter-insurgency, counter-militancy operation. So fragmentation of group also creates a fragmentation of threat, and that create a big problem in the and that creates big difficulty in the gathering of intelligence. And that also, because if suppose that groups are fighting with military and then groups are fighting among with themselves, that means there is a high chance of more civilian collateral. That means higher number of innocent bystanders would be killed in the case of violence. Security forces also had to pressure in the remote terrain. They have to be deployed in the remote terrain. For example, in this particular case itself, we have discussed that fighting and killing has taken place in those areas where there is not even road, there is no electricity, there is no mobile network and all that. So security forces now have to be deployed in those areas as well, as threat seems to be emerging from that theater also. And obviously all of these will give rise to increase in the violent incident, and this becomes especially critical in the context of the state of Manipur, which has been engulfed by violence from last 2-3 years as such. Also, if you try to understand, it has border implications as well. For example, we know that these groups are operating along the Indo-Myanmar border, and whenever security situation deteriorates along this border, other criminal groups, terrorist groups also began to take advantage of this. For example, recently we have seen Naxal groups, that is left-wing extremists, also taking advantages of disturbance in the Manipur and using this to traffic arms and weapons from the China as such. Now, Myanmar junta linked rebel movement also, as we had discussed, is being seen along these areas. Arms and fighters are continuously flowing back into Manipur, and it is believed that large number of arms have been looted during this last 2-3 years of disturbances in Manipur from the police stations of India, and these weapons, it is believed, have been trafficked along the other side of Myanmar border, largely to the Myanmarese rebel groups such as Arakan Army, Chin-Faction group and other groups as such. And thus there is a urgent requirement, as suggested by Ministry of Home Affairs as well, that entire border should be strictly fenced, entire border should be properly fenced, and there should be regular periodic monitoring so that such kind of movement may be stopped. Now, such kind of incidences do not only present security threat, but they also have implications on the development of the overall state as such. For example, as we know that government of India is trying to connect all the northeastern states of India with the mainland India, either by railway network or by airports and all. So any kind of infrastructure plans, obviously if security situation is not good, it will create disturbance and disruption in that. The contractors, laborers, they will not be willing to work in the areas where there is a threat to their life, and that also overall creates a problem in the railway infrastructure development, for example. Apart from that, also, as we have discussed, connectivity project, whether it is about Kaladan multi-modal project, whether it is about the roadway transportation, whether it is about railway transportation, all of these are hindered. Also, as these states offer a very good opportunity for tourists to go there, enjoy the scenic beauty of the forest, especially Himalayas. You have Purvanchal hills, you have dense lush forest and very unique ecosystem and biodiversity. But in the absence of guarantee of security, tourism and agri-economic setback also we can see from this particular state as such. And obviously, if people are not comfortable living in these areas where there is a risk to their life, it will also cause local displacement and the loss of livelihood, and this create another burden on the nearby states such as Mizoram, for example. We have seen in last few years large number of refugees or internally displaced people have migrated from Manipur to Mizoram due to the deterioration of situation. Now, as far as the administrative responses are concerned, we know that since February, after N. Biren Singh resigned as Chief Minister of Manipur, we have seen imposition of president's rule, and now generally there is a consensus that after the imposition of president rule, security situation have improved quietly, and also the number of violent incidents have decreased. Now, CBI also has become quite active here. It has carried out arrest. For example, one of the leaders of what we can call as a very influential Meitei group has been arrested recently, and then we have seen heightened presence of CRPF, Assam Rifles and all that. Even in some areas, armies have been deployed along the border areas. Village security post demand is something that also being seen from here, because especially those villages which are situated along the Myanmar border, they do not feel comfortable because they continuously complain that the Myanmarese groups, rebel groups, are continuously operating, entering India's territory. So they have demanded that there should be a security post in those villages. One example of such villages, Kwatha, Khunu, along the Indo-Myanmar border. Plus, monitoring faction threat levels becomes quite important here. Way forward, what you can say, what more government can do is to revitalize the suspension of operation engagement. As we have discussed in the early part of video, that the groups that are involved in this particular incident, they have not signed SOO agreement with government, so they should also be taken into account. And also there should be acceleration in the fencing along the border. Almost, if you try to understand, it has 1650 kilometers of border if you talk about the entire northeastern border. Now obviously it cannot be fenced along the border throughout entire border, because we have dense forest, hilly terrain and all that, but wherever it is possible, fencing should be accelerated. Third, refugee or infiltration controls should also be exercised here. We have seen in the nearby state of Mizoram itself, almost 30,000 refugees from Myanmar have entered, and these refugees then can further trickle down and further spill over in the nearby state of Manipur as well. That also create further disturbances as the demography starts changing, and that creates trouble in already troubled state of Manipur as such. Border Area Development Fund that government has allocated for each of the border states of India, both western border, northern border and the eastern border, that should be utilized in an efficient manner. And also you have to have dependency on community, because any disturbances first of all is seen or felt by the local community living along the border. So community based early warning system is something that government should also focus upon, and this is something that can also be taken advantage of by the security forces operating in this particular areas. So this is all about this particular video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more such content. Thank you very much.